Welcome to Picard Cast. I'm Brooke, and as always, I'm here with the effervescent Rebecca.
Hello, it's me.
Yep. Not only is it Rebecca and I, but we have our guest today, who is Brian from Pop Culture Leftovers podcast and number one comic books podcast. If you want to listen to those, Rebecca is on number one comic books all the time, but she's on Pop Culture Leftovers quite a bit. So, you know, take a listen.
Welcome, Brian.
Welcome, Brian.
Oh yeah, this is where I talk, right?
You're allowed to talk a little bit, yes.
Yeah. All right. No, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for being on Picard Cast with us. So as you know, we are getting our listeners ready for Picard Cast. So we are reviewing episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation to get you ready. But we are super happy to have you on to talk about our episode tonight is Family from season 4, episode 2.
Mm-hmm. It originally aired on October 1st, 1990. So there's probably some people out there listening who were not even born yet. But, you know, that's going to be maybe a thing, I think, going forward.
Yeah, that's going to be a thing. I was 13.
Yeah. I was 8.
I was 12.
Exciting.
All right, so Brian, we wanted to bombard you with questions about Star Trek. So how and when did you really get into Star Trek?
I tried to get into Star Trek really early, but it was on Fox, our Fox affiliate, at 9 o'clock, and my bedtime was 9. And so when I was 8, 9 years old, I would wait for my dad to go to bed, and I would sneak out and then watch it if I could. Sometimes I'd get caught. We only had 2 TVs back in the day. Sometimes I'd get caught and I'd get sent back to bed. But and so there were many episodes where I only got to watch maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes or something like that. But it came on at 9, and I loved it. I was really getting into science fiction. And then The Next Generation came out, and I was all about it. I loved everything about Star Trek: The Next Generation. So that's one that me and my dad actually watched together, because that came out in 87.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I was 9 years old when that came out, and we started to watch that together. It was a big deal going into it as well. It was the first new Star Trek in a long time. So it was what is this going to be about? And I fell in love with this cast. This is, for me, this is my favorite Star Trek iteration ever, is Next Generation. So I love all the characters. Don't get me wrong, I love some of the characters from the other TV shows, but this is overall, this is what I loved. So yeah, and then of course I've watched the movies and watched some of the other series, but I love Next Generation, so I'm really happy to be talking about this episode.
Was there a particular reason why you picked this episode off the list?
Yeah, because basically you've got him back home, and that's where I believe we're going to meet Picard when this new series starts up. So I thought that this is I'm glad that you guys picked this episode, and then I'm even happier that I got to be on this one, because I feel like this episode for me, they're all on Earth, and it kind of showed some of them are Picard's on Earth, but it kind of showed, just because it's a lot of it's Earth based, it did show a lot of humanity, and I really appreciated that about the episode. So, and I'm sure we're going to unpack it and everything, but yeah. But yeah.
No, that's it. We're done with this episode. Thanks for listening, everybody. We're not going to unpack it any further. See you next week. So it's really interesting. I'm really happy that you picked this one too, Brian. This is actually one of my personal favorite episodes of the whole series. I think for as much as I love Best of Both Worlds, which is the cliffhanger that precedes this, I actually think Family is a stronger episode in certain ways, which we will definitely talk about. And that's nothing against Best of Both Worlds. I think it is probably one of the best, if not the best, cliffhangers in TV history. I think it's really up there. So, but for me, I actually think this is a bit of a stronger episode in some ways. And, yeah, there are lots of little Easter eggs to talk about, lots of little factoids I've got for you guys. So, yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one, too.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorites also. And, you know, I was looking up some stuff for the episode, and it said that it was the lowest rated episode of the season. And I guess it just had to do with, you know, all of this whole big thing with the Borg before that. And then they sort of see the previews and think it's just going to be some slow, nothing episode. But it's really, you really get into the characters, and it's, it is one of my favorites for sure. So, but
I could see why this would be a lower rated, lowest of the season after you just finished watching, you know, after you finish watching the conclusion to Best of Both Worlds, right? And you're just like, oh my God, what a roller coaster, you know? And Captain Picard became a Borg and blah, 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 and all that.
And now he's not.
And now he's not. Oh my God. And I get, but you know, to me, some of the strongest episodes of Trek are when, you really let the actors really shine as far as like their acting ability. And of course, Sir Patrick Stewart putting on a fucking clinic in this episode, all the gauntlet of emotions that he puts on. And we will definitely talk about all of that stuff. So, yeah, so we all love this episode. I'm sure everybody listening loves this episode. So yeah, take it away, Brooke. Let's break it down.
Okay, so hopefully you've seen this, but if not, the synopsis, little tiny one. The crew of the Enterprise returns to Earth for shore leave, and Picard is still recovering from his experience with the Borg, and then he goes to Earth to meet his brother, because what else do? You go visit your family after trauma, for more trauma. No. But the first scene,
you're not wrong.
Right, yeah. First scene, we start out, obviously, as a lot of times with the Stardate, the voiceover, all that kind of thing, showing the Enterprise. We see it is docked at the McKinley space station. They're getting repairs because of all this with the Borg. And for anybody who wanted to know, it was Stardate 44012.3, which means it was Friday, June 10th, 2366 at 3:13 p.m. Just in case anybody needed to know.
Thank you.
That was keeping me up. It really was.
Yes. We don't really get much from this scene. It's just, you know, just a cold open that doesn't have anything. It's the regular kind of cold open. So then the next scene, we see Riker talking to a woman in like a meeting room, I guess. And Worf comes in and she leaves, and they begin talking about the shore leave, and we find out that Worf's parents are coming. And guess what he thinks about that?
Yeah, typical Worf being a Klingon and his very particular upbringing. Worf has a lot of ideas about what Klingons are supposed to do and how they're supposed to be and how they're supposed to feel. And so he's like, it's not appropriate for a warrior to receive family while he's on duty. And, you know, so he's very Worf in this in this episode.
Mm-hmm. I like that Riker's like, well, this isn't a Klingon warship.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the scenes in TNG between like Riker and Worf, because Riker did spend an episode. He was like an exchange officer on a Klingon bird of prey, and a Klingon officer came onto the Enterprise. So Riker has served on a Klingon ship, even briefly. So for him and Worf sometimes have these really great like Klingon discussions, which I always love about TNG, and of course that says a lot for the actors too, Jonathan Frakes and Michael Dorn in this scene.
What I love about Michael Dorn throughout, this episode and throughout like the series in general is like you never know what he's. I feel like I never know what he's thinking and how he's processing things.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's really cool about kind of like the Klingons is like, especially with his situation. I never really know how he's processing things. Like at the end of the day, like is he gonna? Because I thought Riker made a great point, but it's like, is Worf really listening to that? I can never nail down his facial expression as to whether like he's like, oh yeah, he's right, or he's just kind of stubborn and stuck in his Klingon ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that definitely speaks a lot to Michael Dorn playing this character. And you're right, like with Worf, you just kind of never know how he's gonna react. And I think that's kind of the point. Like as we all know, like Worf was raised by human parents, and so he doesn't have the full Klingon experience that like every other Klingon had growing up on the homeworld. So in his upbringing, he tries to be the Klingon that he thinks he should be, but sometimes his human side gets in the way. And I do like that about him too, is that you don't know if he's going to laugh at what you're about to say or if he's going to smack you for what you just said to him.
You were saying you don't know what he's thinking, and it's not like Michael Dorn is not acting or the prosthetics aren't letting him act. You can tell that he's thinking about something, but then he's trying to be more restrained because that's what Worf usually is, unless he's like angry, it's like, or laughing really hard at something that's not necessarily funny to everyone else. You can I totally agree that it is all him, that he does such a good job with this, because you can still see that he's acting because he's being this warrior.
You can tell
alien warrior.
He's gotten great direction from people that are involved, but I think he also just took that direction and ran with it and made it something completely his own. And yeah, it's like when you're watching this, you're 100% buying that this is an alien that is amongst humans, and our traditions are different. And yeah, he's a very cool character. So yeah, Michael Dorn deserves a lot of props for this and for that fucking silky smooth voice of his.
Yes,
it's true. Michael Dorn actually still in amazing shape. He's been a vegan for decades, and he credits a little factoid there for you. He credits his and he's a big dude. Like I know on screen Worf is imposing, they give him the prosthetics and the hair and all that, but in real life, Michael Dorn is an imposing guy. He's quite tall and broad-shouldered, and he says it's all because he's vegan and he works out and he still lives a very healthy lifestyle. So there you go. Very opposite a Klingon diet for sure, but just a quick note too, Brian, you mentioned like the direction that Michael Dorn gets, and this particular episode was directed by Les Landau, who has done some of, in my opinion, some of the best episodes of Star Trek, but he also, as a little sort of aside, directed 5 episodes of Beverly Hills 90210, a show that both Brian and I love very much.
Hilarious.
Very much so. That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It's like you guys were talking earlier about how like this episode was poorly received. Was it poorly received at the time, or is it
at the time? Yeah.
Okay. I guess that makes sense. But just like they were, making wine in this episode, it's aged quite well, wouldn't you say?
Oh yes.
Yes.
I see what you did there.
I think it's like these. I think like what